In a small, dimly lit room, a person sits alone, staring out the window at the world passing by. The sound of distant traffic, the murmur of life outside, seems to reach them as if from a far-off place, detached and hollow. They've been here for hours, days, perhaps, caught in a numb stillness that's hard to define. There is a sense of emptiness, not of depression or sadness, but something even more elusive. It's as though the energy of life has stopped for them. They're not sad, not angry, not even apathetic, just indifferent. The question lingers. Why does this feel so wrong? This feeling is one many have experienced at different points in their lives, an emotional disconnect, a void where passion and care once lived. In popular culture, indifference is often treated as the opposite of love, the absence of compassion, a moral failing. We hear it in phrases like, "You've become indifferent to me," or "Indifference is the root of all evil." It's a quality many fear, seeing it as a sign of weakness, of giving up, of losing touch with one's humanity. But what if that understanding of indifference, of emotional coldness and detachment, is only a surface-level reading? What if indifference, in its truest sense, is not a flaw, but a necessary stage in our psychological and emotional development? In our modern world, we are constantly inundated with information, emotions, and demands from all directions. The expectations are high. Be productive, be happy, be connected. But in the rush to meet those demands, we often miss the quiet space between stimuli, the place where true self-awareness is formed. When we feel overwhelmed by the chaos of life, when we face our darkest emotions or deepest questions, indifference can arise, not as a failure to care, but as a signal from within, asking us to step back, detach, and reflect. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, understood indifference in a profoundly different light. For Jung, indifference wasn't the absence of feeling or the denial of emotional connection. Instead, it was a form of detachment, a necessary separation from the external world, the tyranny of the shoulds, in order to connect with the deeper, unconscious parts of the self. Jung argued that in order to undergo a process of individuation, becoming the person we are truly meant to be, we must, at times, distance ourselves from the noise of external influence. We must become indifferent to the voices around us, including those of society, family, and even our own expectations, in order to hear the quieter, more profound voice of our own soul. At first glance, this concept seems counterintuitive. If we are supposed to care about others, about our lives, about our work, why would indifference be considered a positive force? Isn't indifference a kind of emotional coldness? Doesn't it signify a lack of empathy or love? Yet, when examined through the lens of Jung's philosophy, we begin to see indifference as a tool of self-liberation. Imagine a tree in a forest, standing alone on a hill. For years, it has faced the winds, the rain, the harsh sun, its roots deep in the earth. The tree may look invincible to the outside world, but beneath the surface, the tree is in a constant state of growth and transformation. In order for the tree to survive the winter, it must let go of its leaves. It becomes indifferent to the outward signs of life that it must shed. In doing so, it can conserve its energy for the coming spring. The indifference of the tree is not a rejection of life. It is a necessary, natural process that ensures its survival and growth. This is the essence of Jung's understanding of indifference. It is not a passive escape from the world, but a necessary detachment in order to transform. Just as the tree sheds its leaves to prepare for renewal, so too must we, at times, shed the excess noise, expectations, and distractions of life in order to reconnect with our true selves. Indifference, then, is not about a lack of feeling. It is about choosing which feelings to invest in, which emotions to allow to dominate our consciousness, and which ones to let go. It is about standing apart from the chaos and the confusion of the world in order to reorient ourselves in alignment with our deeper truths. It is about pausing long enough to ask the questions that matter, not the questions of others, not the questions of society, but the questions that only we can answer for ourselves. In this sense, indifference is deeply tied to freedom. It is the freedom to step away from the constant pressure of external influence, to give ourselves permission to not always feel, not always care, and not always be on. When we embrace indifference, we step into a space of profound authenticity. We stop trying to meet the expectations of others or to conform to the mold set by society. Instead, we enter into a process of individuation, a process of discovering who we truly are when we stop pretending and stop performing. The beauty of indifference is that it allows us to become more selective in how we engage with the world. We can choose what to care about, what to invest our emotional energy in, and what to let pass by without being touched. This detachment is not a callous refusal to engage. It is an intentional act of freedom, a recognition that we cannot be everything to everyone, nor should we try. This paradox, that indifference can be a source of liberation, becomes even clearer when we look at the ideas of other great thinkers, such as Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche spoke of the necessity of embracing chaos, of standing apart from the herd, of rejecting societal norms in order to become the Overman or Übermensch. In this sense, indifference can be seen as a way to reject the herd mentality, the pressure to conform to the expectations of the majority, in order to find one's own path. Nietzsche believed that only through detaching from the collective and embracing our own inner chaos could we experience true freedom and self-actualization. Viktor Frankl, too, explored this idea of finding meaning through detachment, but from a different perspective. Frankl's experiences in Nazi concentration camps revealed to him that while we cannot control our external circumstances, we always have the power to choose our response to those circumstances. He called this the freedom of choice, a freedom that exists even in the most extreme conditions of suffering and despair. Frankl's idea echoes Jung's, in that we must sometimes detach from the immediate emotional impact of a situation in order to find a deeper meaning or truth within it. So, what if indifference isn't something to fear? What if, instead of seeing it as a cold void to be avoided at all costs, we began to view it as an invitation, a doorway to a deeper understanding of ourselves? What if it is through moments of indifference that we are given the opportunity to break free from the tyranny of societal expectations, to step away from the noise, and to reconnect with what truly matters? As we continue this journey into understanding indifference, we must ask ourselves, how often do we find ourselves swept up in the emotions and expectations of others? How much of our emotional energy is consumed by the external world, leaving little room for self-reflection or growth? And perhaps most importantly, what would happen if, for just a moment, we allowed ourselves to embrace the space of indifference, not as a rejection of life, but as a path to greater freedom and authenticity? These are the questions we must explore in the sections to come. But for now, let us hold this one thought. What if indifference is not the enemy, but the doorway to a deeper, truer version of ourselves? This question will guide us as we explore the true nature of indifference and its potential role in our lives. At first glance, the idea of indifference can feel unsettling. It's often associated with emotional numbness or apathy, a rejection of the world and the people within it. But when we delve deeper into the concept through the lens of Carl Jung's work, we begin to see that indifference, far from being an enemy, is an essential psychological tool. For Jung, indifference was not a passive disengagement from life, but an active process of self-preservation and transformation. It was a necessary detachment from external influences in order to reconnect with the inner self. Jung's understanding of indifference is rooted in his broader concept of individuation, the lifelong process by which we come to know and integrate the various parts of ourselves, including those aspects of our psyche that have been repressed or ignored. The goal of individuation is not to become someone else or to conform to societal norms, but to become more fully ourselves. It is about embracing all aspects of the self, including the shadow, the hidden, unconscious parts of us that we often neglect or deny. Indifference, in this context, can be seen as a psychological mechanism that allows us to step away from the overwhelming demands of the external world, society's expectations, familial pressures, the distractions of modern life, in order to focus on the deeper, more authentic aspects of our being. Jung believed that in order to become truly individuated, we must sometimes withdraw from the noise of the world and turn inward. This detachment is not a rejection of life, but a necessary pause, a time of reflection and inner growth. When we are constantly immersed in the demands of the outside world, whether it's our job, relationships, or social media, we lose touch with our inner self. The external world becomes the driving force of our lives, and we become reactive rather than proactive. We are pulled in countless directions, often acting out of fear, guilt, or obligation rather than from a place of true desire or self-awareness. Indifference, then, is the space we enter when we step back from this external chaos. It is a moment of detachment that allows us to regain perspective, to evaluate our lives, and to reconnect with what is most important to us. Jung believed that in order to achieve individuation, we must learn to recognize the parts of ourselves that have been buried or repressed. These parts of ourselves often include our desires, emotions, and aspects of our personality that we find uncomfortable or shameful. We all have a shadow side, those parts of us that we hide from the world and from ourselves. Indifference, in this sense, can be seen as a necessary state that allows us to confront these hidden parts without the distractions of external influences. By stepping away from the external world and becoming indifferent to the judgment and expectations of others, we create the space to explore and integrate the aspects of ourselves that we have long ignored. This is where the psychological and philosophical depth of indifference begins to unfold. Indifference is not a denial of feeling or an emotional void. It is a way of disengaging from the emotional clutter that clouds our ability to see ourselves clearly. It is a pause, a moment of stillness, where we can reflect on our life, our choices, and our inner truth without the influence of the outside world. This process of detachment allows us to find clarity, to see what is truly important to us, and to align our actions with our deepest values. In this sense, indifference is not something to be feared. It is a necessary part of the individuation process. When we embrace indifference, we are not rejecting the world. We are simply choosing to step back from it in order to reconnect with our true selves. This detachment is not a sign of weakness or apathy, but an active choice to prioritize our own growth and self-understanding over the demands and distractions of the external world. Jung's understanding of indifference is deeply tied to his larger philosophy of the unconscious. He believed that much of our behavior is driven by unconscious forces, instincts, desires, and memories that we are not consciously aware of. These unconscious forces shape our perceptions, our actions, and our relationships. In order to become more conscious of these forces, we must first become indifferent to the constant barrage of external stimuli that prevents us from seeing clearly. When we withdraw from the noise of the outside world, we can begin to hear the subtle messages of our unconscious mind, which may be trying to communicate truths about who we are and what we need. This is where the work of other thinkers, like Friedrich Nietzsche, intersects with Jung's. Nietzsche, too, recognized the importance of stepping away from societal expectations and norms in order to create something new and authentic. He argued that in order to live a life of true freedom, we must be willing to reject the values imposed upon us by society, religion, and culture. He famously wrote, "Become who you are." For Nietzsche, this was the essence of self-realization, not to conform to external expectations, but to break free from them and create a life that is uniquely our own. Like Jung, Nietzsche recognized that this process of self-creation requires a kind of indifference, a detachment from the values, beliefs, and norms that shape our understanding of the world. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch or Overman represents the individual who has transcended the limitations imposed by society and is free to create their own values and meaning. The Übermensch is indifferent to the pressures of the herd and lives in accordance with their own inner truth. This kind of indifference is not about emotional coldness, but about freedom, the freedom to be oneself without the need for external validation. Viktor Frankl, another influential thinker in the realm of psychological wisdom, also explored the idea of detachment, but from a different angle. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, argued that while we cannot always control our external circumstances, We always have the power to choose our response to those circumstances. He referred to this power as the freedom of choice. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl explains how, even in the most dire situations, individuals can find meaning by detaching themselves from the emotional weight of their suffering and choosing how they respond to it. For Frankl, indifference is not about abandoning life, but about finding a space of inner freedom and peace in the face of external hardship. Frankl's ideas resonate deeply with Jung's concept of indifference. Both see detachment as a path to deeper self-awareness and personal freedom. When we detach from the chaos and suffering of the external world, we open ourselves to a deeper level of meaning and connection. Indifference, then, is not an absence of meaning, but a pathway to it. It allows us to transcend the surface-level distractions of life and connect with something more profound and enduring. As we explore the nature of indifference, we begin to see that it is not an enemy of connection or love, but a necessary stage in the process of individuation. It is the space in which we can pause, reflect, and reconnect with our inner truth. By becoming indifferent to the noise and demands of the world, we free ourselves from the shackles of societal expectation and open ourselves to the possibility of becoming the person we are truly meant to be. Indifference, then, is not a sign of apathy or disconnection. It is a powerful tool for self-liberation. It is the space in which we can reclaim our authenticity, face the unconscious parts of ourselves, and choose to live a life that is true to who we are. Far from being a weakness, indifference is an essential part of the journey towards self-actualization. It allows us to step away from the external world and reconnect with our inner world, where true freedom and meaning await. The moment of transformation is always a paradox. It comes when we least expect it, often at the precipice of despair or uncertainty, when we feel lost or adrift in the noise of the world. It is here, in the emptiness, that we find the possibility of profound change. The very indifference we once feared, the space we initially tried to escape from, becomes the fertile ground for a deeper understanding of ourselves. At the heart of this transformation is the realization that indifference is not a barrier to connection, but a bridge to it. When we embrace indifference not as a rejection of the world, but as a form of freedom, we open the door to a more authentic and meaningful life. This shift in perspective is both subtle and monumental. It is the understanding that in order to truly connect with the world and others, we must first be willing to step back from it. We must detach, not out of a desire to escape, but in order to rediscover our true selves. Jung's process of individuation is rooted in this very idea, that in order to become the person we are meant to be, we must first embrace our own emptiness, our own indifference to the distractions of the world. It is in this space of detachment that we can confront our deepest fears and desires, our unresolved conflicts, and our hidden truths. It is here that we come face to face with the parts of ourselves that we have long ignored or repressed, the shadow aspects of our psyche that we have kept hidden from the world and even from ourselves. This confrontation with the shadow is not easy. It is often uncomfortable and even painful, but it is also liberating. By embracing the indifferent space within us, we are given the opportunity to confront and integrate these hidden parts of ourselves. Instead of pushing them away or denying their existence, we allow them to come into the light, to be acknowledged and accepted. It is only through this process of integration that we can become whole. The transformation that comes from embracing indifference is a journey from fragmentation to wholeness. It is a journey of acceptance of both the light and the dark, the known and the unknown, the conscious and the unconscious. We learn to accept the parts of ourselves that we once rejected, and in doing so, we become more complete, more integrated, more authentic. This is the essence of individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, not who the world expects us to be. The insight that follows this transformation is profound. We begin to see that indifference was never a form of coldness, but a form of self-preservation. It was a necessary detachment from the external world so that we could reconnect with our internal world. It is through this detachment that we find the clarity and strength to face our fears, to confront our unresolved emotions, and to integrate the parts of ourselves that have been hidden. Far from being an escape, indifference becomes a tool for self-liberation, a way to step outside of the noise and chaos of the world in order to find our own truth. Once we embrace indifference in this way, something remarkable happens. We become free. Free from the need to constantly conform to external expectations, free from the weight of societal pressure, free from the fear of judgment or rejection. We no longer need the approval of others to define our worth. We no longer need to chase external validation or approval. Instead, we are able to define ourselves from within, based on our own values and desires, not the dictates of the outside world. This freedom is the key to true connection. It may seem counterintuitive, but the more we detach from the external world, the more we are able to connect with it on a deeper level. This is the paradox at the heart of indifference. By stepping back from the world, we find a way to engage with it more authentically. We are no longer controlled by the expectations or judgments of others. Instead, we engage with the world from a place of inner strength, from a place of clarity and authenticity. This shift is not only psychological, but also deeply emotional. When we embrace indifference as a tool for self-liberation, we begin to experience our emotions more fully. We are no longer consumed by the constant tug-of-war between external expectations and internal desires. Instead, we allow ourselves to feel, without judgment, without fear. We can experience the full range of human emotion, joy, sadness, love, anger, without being overwhelmed by them. This emotional freedom is a direct result of our detachment from the external world. By stepping away from the constant pressures and demands of the world, we create the space to feel our emotions deeply, without being defined by them. The process of transformation is one of shedding. Just as a snake sheds its skin in order to grow, we must shed the layers of external influence, of societal expectation, and of emotional baggage that no longer serve us. This shedding is not about rejection, it is about liberation. We are not discarding who we are simply releasing the parts of ourselves that are holding us back from becoming who we are meant to be. The shedding process is also deeply liberating because it allows us to live more authentically. When we shed the need for external validation, when we let go of the need to conform to societal norms, we become free to create our own meaning and values. We are no longer beholden to the judgments of others. We are free to live in alignment with our deepest truth, to create a life that is true to who we are, not who we think we should be. This transformation is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. The more we embrace indifference, the more we shed the layers of external influence and emotional baggage. The more we detach from the chaos of the outside world, the more we reconnect with the deeper, truer parts of ourselves. It is through this ongoing process of detachment and reconnection that we continue to grow, to evolve, and to become more fully ourselves. In this sense, indifference becomes a powerful tool for emotional and psychological growth. It is not something to be feared or avoided, but something to be embraced.